Yo, what's up? My name's Clarence,
And I'm DJ Nuna,
and you're listening to Up in the Air.
a podcast on our thoughts, moods, and experiences on the personal, political, and cultural world around us. Come float with us.
For this week's episode, we're joined by Elaine Tian. I've known Elaine for quite a few years, but we've rarely had time for a real conversation. What fueled this episode is Elaine's brilliant food Instagram page at aaimresources, which she recently unveiled to the public. Her dishes are insanely beautiful and, of course, mouth-watering, all of which she captures in the comfort of her own home with an iPhone. It was so fun to finally sit down with Elaine and talk about her college experiences abroad, the uphill battle of being an art major, the philosophy behind her food page, and more. We hope you enjoy. Yes. So I'll start with a little anecdote. So I love, going through Instagram, and I've been doing it too much nowadays. And over the summer, I was really loving the whole sourdough kind of like craze. I was
Yeah.
loving that, and I was like, oh my god, like I love seeing something come from start, it's the weird looking thing that in a jar, and then it becoming this beautiful piece of bread. And it's just so satisfying because I'm a terrible baker. So seeing other people do it, I'm like, that's fantastic. That's just all I need to see, right? And I remember seeing Elaine, you posted something, along those lines of showing your process and showing this product. And I was like, that's amazing. I love that. And I messaged you, I was like, I love this. And and then I've discovered your baking account recently, baking and cooking. And I was just like, I mean, you've been posting a lot, but I think you just recently kind of put your name on it and just
Right.
unveiled it. You just,
Released it into the
yeah,
world.
you released it into the world. You made yourself vulnerable, but it's amazing. And the content is crazy. It's so beautiful. And
Oh.
that's exactly why I wanted to have you on because, we haven't talked in a long time and I'd love to just get to know you better. So for people who don't know who you are, Elaine, could you kind of tell us a little bit about, where you grew up, what you studied in school, and kind of what you're up to now?
Yeah. So we can go all the way back. I was born in Michigan.
I was born into the
I was
yeah.
born under the No, I was born in Michigan, but I moved to Seattle when I was 3. So I grew up here pretty much my whole life. It's all I've ever really known. And then I kind of went back to my roots. I went to college at Carleton in Minnesota. My education was kind of circuitous there. Went in thinking I was going to be pre-med, hated chemistry. Couldn't even we had 3 classes you could scrunch to pass fail. I was like pass fail, no way can I do chemistry. So that derailed. And then I went on to computer science, which super props to you guys for doing anything tangential to that because it was not for me. The department, in my opinion, kind of sucked. It just wasn't, I don't have the brain for it. And so I went abroad to France for my sophomore year. And at that point I had already declared CS, but I did an internship with this artist over the summer and lived with her and just made ceramics all day. And I was like, you know what, this is what I like to do. And I had been taking art classes the whole time I was there. And so when I came back, I was just like, I'm going to switch majors. I'm going to do art. So I ended up majoring in art and minoring in art history. It sounds really simple. This was a very tough time in my life. There was a lot of fighting with my parents. It was just not. But yeah, I ended up majoring in art and minoring in art history. And then post grad, I moved to New York for an internship. I did an internship at the Guggenheim last fall.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I was working retail on the side, applying to art jobs. Pandemic hit. Lost my job. And now I'm back home in Seattle, kind of trying to figure things out. And that's kind of where I'm at now. But yeah.
Wow, I feel like that kind of like that what you experienced in college, trying different majors and then going into art is something similar to me.
Yeah.
In that I tried going the whole business route and I hated that shit and I was like it's not for me. And then just kind of just you're doing soul searching, you're literally just trying to find your passions. And that's amazing that you got to go to France and
yeah, I felt so lucky. Yeah.
So was that a program that kind of so you were staying with an artist kind of and just working alongside them?
So what part of the reason I went to Carleton in the first place is because they really pushed this study abroad thing. They're like, you know what, 70% of people study abroad, 30% do it twice. Like a lot of people go abroad.
What?
So yeah, it's really cool. And so I went for my sophomore spring. I went to France just to like study in Paris. It was like part of our program, just normal French classes and stuff. And then you had the option to extend your stay through the summer and do an internship. And so that part was with an artist. So I did like half just normal classes in France and then half like working and living. Yeah, and it was with a
Wow,
host family. It was really cool. It was great.
that sounds so beautiful. Just imagining you like making ceramics all day in Paris. Wow. What was your favorite part of being in the city and that experience in itself?
um, I think I mean, my host family was wonderful. Like, they were really great people, and I had a really good experience with them. But over the summer, when I was doing my internship, I split my time living with some friends in an apartment and
Mhm.
living with the artist in her country house. And so, like, I can't really choose between those two because they're both like crazy. Like, I can't even believe I got to do that. But like, living with your friends in an apartment in Paris is just kind of unbeatable. I
Wow.
will say, I will say that like describing like, oh, I lived with an artist in France, it sounds like so beautiful and romantic. And it was, but also like I was just sweating my ass off every day, all day, every day, like next to this giant kiln, like in 105-degree weather. It was like disgusting, but wonderful. So
Wouldn't
Oh,
trade it for the
wow.
world.
yeah, no, not at all.
And so you kind of so you went to New York after you graduated,
Mhm.
and actually let me dial it back. So you said that you had like, arguments with your parents, and like that's something that I think as Asian Americans we kind of experience that all the time, where you choose anything remotely outside of like the typical, I don't know, 10 jobs that would make you the most rich person, whatever.
Right.
Um, how did you deal with that? And like what like I guess, did it ever really kind of smooth itself over, or is it still an ongoing sort of debate?
Yeah, so it was kind of hard because I didn't like there was always this internal battle of like I don't want to disappoint my parents. Like they really are like they've done everything their whole lives to like put me through school, like to do everything so that I'm on the right path to like succeeding. And I really wanted to be able to acknowledge that to them and like show my gratitude. But at the same time, I had this conversation with myself and like with my friends and my boyfriend, and we were just all like, it would be doing a disservice to them for me to like follow this path where I ultimately just crash because it's not what I want to do. And
Yeah.
like, what is the point of spending all that money for an education that I don't care about? Where like, it's just to get the grades to get move on to the next school, to move on to the next job. And like,
Mhm.
I just really knowing myself, I knew eventually I would hit a wall, and that like wasn't gonna be good for anyone involved.
Mhm.
And so it took a lot of convincing. I mean, sometimes I think they're still not convinced, but getting that Guggenheim internship, like seeing the projects I was doing at school, like all of these little milestones, it was enough for them to like kind of see that if I'm doing something I really care about, like I'm actually going to be motivated to do it and not complain all the time and not like drag my feet about it.
Mhm.
So I think they're coming around to it. They came around a little bit at school. They're coming around more. The pandemic obviously was a bump in the road, but like we're getting there, I think.
Small bump in the road, yeah.
Small
Yeah.
bump, tiny bump. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with that because similar to both you and Clarence, I pivoted during my sophomore year in college, and Clarence and I are both actually fifth years because we are in the design program. And so even just taking that fifth year, I was really on the fence. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
should I really put my parents through that, or is it really worth an extra year of school? But I kept telling myself it's way better than going through my education, regretting it, and then having to start over and do another 4 years. Because I've heard of that before, of people like doing it in their masters or doing their bachelor's again,
Yeah.
in the major that they actually are passionate about. So yeah, I think design and art, it's really hard to communicate that to parents sometimes as like a
Mm-hmm.
feasible and stable career. And I mean, to this day, I'm still not convinced how stable it, like I still have so much uncertainty about the future, honestly,
Yeah.
especially with the pandemic. So Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation for
For
sure.
sure. Yeah, I totally feel that. And seeing how the art world was impacted by the pandemic, like my bosses were all furloughed. Like the people that I thought were so beyond secure were also losing their
Right.
jobs. And so
Mhm.
watching everything crumble was kind of eye-opening to be like, yes, it's great to chase your passions, but like the stability thing is real. Like there is a reason why our parents are telling us to go be doctors and lawyers. So I
Right.
don't know. There is like I definitely still have that debate, but I don't really regret anything I did. And so there's that too.
Yeah, my brother showed me this meme recently where it was like you're on the plane and someone's like sick, and they need medical attention, and then your dad goes like, "Oh, why don't you go help them with your graphic design degree?"
Oh
Like
my
he's like, "What are you gonna do? Create a PDF for them?" Like
paint them back to life. Yeah.
I was like, "Oh God,
So
don't, please
good.
don't."
I thought you were gonna talk about that meme where it's that guy that's laying on the floor and the dad's like, "How's it going, son?" And then the screen says like LinkedIn or
Oh
something.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like you're searching for all these jobs and stuff. Oh my God.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh no.
But New York must have been amazing for the short time that you were there. I mean, so
Yeah.
you had graduated in 20 18,
2019, right? Yeah,
19.
2019.
So you were there for just like about almost a year then,
Yeah,
or
well,
less.
so my boyfriend is actually getting his master's in Hong Kong. And
Mm.
so I spent the summer after graduation there. And then in the fall, I moved to New York. So I was there from September until, I want to say June. Yeah, I think so. Something like that. Yeah, almost a year. It
Wow,
was
that's
great.
amazing that you lived in both Hong Kong and New York. What were some highlights from those experiences?
Um, that's I don't so in Hong Kong I actually did this 2-week art program kind of where I was learning from artists and like fellow people that were interested in curation, which is what my internship was about and what I kind of was thinking about doing. Um, and that was a really amazing experience, just like talking to like-minded people, because
Mm-hmm.
as fantastic as my experience at Carleton was and like the art majors and art history majors I met there were, it's kind of different meeting people that want to go into the same professional field. Like maybe academically you have similarities, but there are always differences in what you want to end up doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so like talking to people about curation, about like why they were passionate about art, like the kinds of art they were into, it was always really cool. And there were people who had already had their masters, like had been working in the field for a while, so that was just a really good opportunity for me to see what was out there. And I'd never been to Hong Kong, and like I don't think there's just nowhere in the world that's remotely like it. Like when I
Yeah, it's
yeah,
so amazing. It's
it
like,
is
I mean, people say
incredible.
it's like a New York in a way, but
Oh,
it is
but
very, I would say it is very different, like super different.
it's so different, like incredible. I want to go back, but yeah, it was really cool. And I want to move back to New York too. Like my plans right now are to go in the spring if possible, if I can try and find anything. Moving there without a job is kind of ridiculous. So
The living cost is
yeah, yeah.
I think New York is a lot of my friends and I's dream to one day move there. And so
Mhm.
we would exchange like little apartment searching videos.
Yeah,
I'm like, damn, this is ridiculous for like the smallest studio. It's
it
like
is. Yeah,
over 2,000. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. That's why I came back, because like once I got laid off, I could stay for a little longer, and then it just became so
Yeah.
unsustainable. And like you're right, you pay so much money for so little space. Like I don't know. Sometimes I question myself, but
No, yeah. But honestly, I think maybe I romanticize New York from an outsider, but do you think living there was like really fulfilling and you felt really at place there and at home?
I would say so. Yeah, I think New York does get romanticized, but I was living in areas in Brooklyn where you could just like, if you need something, you pop down to like the bodega. There's like stores, all
Yeah.
sorts of little stores that have whatever you need, like right around you. You don't have to drive anywhere. Like your friends are there, everything's walking distance. And that kind of life is just what I like what I'm looking for. I don't really want to have to like drive everywhere, which is what I've grown up doing in Seattle. It's exhausting for me. I hate driving. Oh my God.
Me too. Every
You
time
don't
I
like to
have
sit
to
through traffic? Like, what are you
Oh my
talking
God.
about?
Every time I drive up to Clarence, he's like, "Why does it take you so long?" It's because I drive. I'm such a timid driver and
Me too.
cautious.
Yeah, I get so anxious when I drive. Like my palms are just like damp 24/7 when I'm driving. I
No,
You're just like
can't
for real.
slipping on the wheel.
literally just like sliding off.
No, yeah,
Yeah, not for me.
that honestly sounds like the dream. I think I've heard people say yes, it's romanticized, but it's accurately romanticized, and it's
Hmm.
all worth the hype. So
Yeah.
I'm excited for hopefully the spring you'll be able to go back.
Thanks, me too.
Yeah. But yeah, I think we can talk more about your baking and how that intersects with your art background and
Hmm.
yeah, maybe how you started with baking. I know Clarence kind of mentioned that it's grown, especially during quarantine, but
Hmm.
yeah, maybe talk about your story with that.
Yeah, I've been baking. I don't want to say I've been baking for a really long time, but like even in middle school, high school, back here in Seattle, I've like done baking as a way to relieve stress, just like side projects, also just like make food to eat. Um, and cooking less so, like far less so. My mom is an amazing cook. My grandma's an amazing cook, and she comes and visits a lot. And so there's just always been good food, and I haven't had to do that. But then senior year of college, that kind of changed because I was living in a house, whereas before I'd been living in the dorms and eating in the dining halls. And so I had to cook all of my meals basically. And basically took cooking as like the biggest distraction possible from anything related to school. Like I would use it as a way of procrastinating every chance I could get. And so I started making like huge project meals where like you just do things for hours and hours and I'd be like, oh, gotta go check on the food. Like, sorry, can't work on this. Um, and that's when I really started cooking a lot. And then I also had a housemate, Lucy, who just like is a phenomenal baker, and she would always take over that job. There were always great baked goods in the house. Didn't really do that much in college. Then when I lived in New York, I also had to feed myself again. And so I would cook, but then I could also bake more at that point. And so it just kind of grew into this thing. And I was cooking and baking so much after was laid off that I was like, it would be a disservice to my family and my friends if I didn't like post this and show them like, there's just so much food right now, and if I just eat this for myself, I feel like I'm hoarding it. So really, the account kind of started. I don't know if you scroll back and look at like my captions and like the number of likes, it was clearly just like almost a Finsta where I would just like dump all of these photos and be like, hey, look what I'm doing. Like, I don't know. I think maybe Clarence, you mentioned earlier that like it's hard to keep in touch with people right now, and I felt really overwhelmed by that at the beginning. So I was like, would be a great way for me to show people what I'm up to without really having to like talk to a bunch of people all the time.
Yeah, I feel like I do that too. Like every once in a while, I
Yeah.
post something on my story just to let people know that like I'm still around.
Yeah, like,
Okay.
hey, I'm alive, don't worry.
They're like, hey, I'm here. I'm doing well.
Exactly.
Like
Yeah.
we're hanging in there. But
Yeah.
that's amazing. I feel like I did like scroll through your baking account, and like you could see progressively like how the photos were becoming like you seem to figure out sort of a way to photograph your food, and
Hmm.
um yeah, your captions are changing, and I think it's really interesting to just see that progression like throughout your
Yeah.
the feed. And I mean, like, what at this point do you think that kind of what you imagined or what you began, the reasons why you posted has shifted at this point? You know?
I this is like a conversation I have with myself a lot where I don't want the account to be something that's such a driving force in my life that it changes like what I'm making and what I'm cooking, because I think Instagram can have that influence a lot of the time where like something trends and you're like, oh, I gotta hop on that. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know, milk buns are trending. I gotta make milk buns, like whatever it is. Because at the end of the day, like I cook because I want to eat something, you know? And so I don't want to change what I'm making just because it's pretty or ugly. And this is actually hard now that I'm home because I want to make as much Chinese food as possible now that I have the resources to like learn that again with my mom and my grandma around. And a lot of the time it's hard to plate that and photograph it. Like it just doesn't look the same as a lot of the other things I was making. And trying to figure that out has been kind of interesting. whereas like a baked good, like you just put it on a plate and it looks great. Like
Yeah,
a
it just has a
pile.
little nice sheen on it, and like
Exactly, yeah, but like stir fry, it's harder. It's like kind of like a brown blob. Like, what are you gonna do with that?
yeah,
So
yeah.
trying to figure out how I can incorporate the things I actually eat and on a day-to-day basis and want to make into the aesthetic of what I'm doing on Instagram has been kind of interesting. And I haven't really started doing that, but it's something I'm thinking about.
Yeah, I just bought a. Oh, I didn't buy it. I got it as a gift. But I got a Namwa cooking book.
Oh,
It's
cool.
that restaurant in New York.
Yeah.
Um, and I honestly I wanted it because the photos are done by this photographer that I really like. But
Mhm.
it's like they do an interesting job of making dim sum look really beautiful, and like
Mhm.
I think a lot of times when I think of dim sum, think of Chinese food. Yeah, it's like, maybe not the most beautiful of presentation. It's,
Right.
like the restaurant's like you're in the corner, it's kind of dark, but like it's hustling and bustling. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's interesting. Like, how has your parents, like kind of reacted to your account, or have they seen the account?
Yeah, they have. My
Okay.
mom made an Instagram specifically to follow me. It was very cute. Yeah.
Love that.
We love the
Yeah.
support.
It's very sweet. They've been super nice about it and super supportive. And like if my mom is home while I'm trying to take a photo, she'll be like, "Let me help. Like I want to help you stage it. I
I
want to
love
help you
that.
play."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really sweet. But I think they would like to see more Chinese food on it because like I would say my account now is not a completely accurate reflection of what I eat every day because like I really just haven't figured out a way to showcase Chinese food in a way that I think does it justice. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah.
No, yeah, that makes sense. I think I resonate with that too because I'm at home and I'm Korean, so
Mhm.
I'm Korean American. So I think right now Clarence and I are both working on a publication project and we have a different prompt, but mine is like a recipe book. So it's been
Oh.
really interesting being able to see like from the ground up these different recipes that I've just eaten throughout my childhood and then realizing in college, damn, I don't actually know how to make a lot of these or like well. And so when I start a family in like way in the future, like what will they eat? Will they eat like
Yeah.
chicken? Like I don't know. So it's been really refreshing to be back at home. I think that's been one of the best opportunities during quarantine. I'm eating really well, just eating my mom's food.
Just thriving at
The
home.
quarantine
Truly.
16. Yeah. But yeah, how do you think your roots or like your culture has impacted your cooking? You kind of mentioned it, how what you are baking is like a sliver of what you eat, not a sliver, but like a portion
Mhm.
of what you eat day to
Mhm.
day. Like, how do you think that impacts, your cooking, baking?
I think there are a lot of like flavors that I try to incorporate. So like in Chinese desserts, there's a really strong emphasis on making things not too sweet. That could just be my family, but like everything is like my mom will be like, "Oh, this is really good because it's not that sweet." And like in American sweets, that's not really what people say.
Yeah, it's like the opposite, really.
Yeah, so I do try to like I think the way that desserts and stuff are framed in my mind is just a little bit different. Um and when it comes to like cooking in general, I think the philosophy of my mom and my grandma of like just seeing what's in the fridge and using that is something that I've kind of tried to keep, where it's like you don't just run out to the store because you need an ingredient for a recipe. You just try to like work something together out of what you have. Um, which I think plays into like what I was taught at school for my art degree is just like trying to be resourceful with what you have. Um, so yeah, I think that's a really strong influence from my upbringing. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And the whole not too sweet thing is really real for my family as well. Because if you think about it, like some of the like tasty desserts that they post, it's like really it's like brownie,
Yeah.
cake, mochi, or some like wacky combination. But even when I get cakes from like a Korean or a different Asian bakery, the
Mm-hmm.
frosting is not sweet, and that's what tastes really good. I think I recently had this sweet potato cake that was so good, and the frosting
Mm-hmm.
is super light, where for American bakeries the frosting is like really sweet. No hate to people that like it, 'cause I liked it growing up, but
Uh-huh.
um that makes a lot of sense. Like milk buns are really the flavor is really, it's present, but it's not super sweet. So
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Hmm. Do you
So
ever?
when
Oh shoot, you go ahead, Clarence.
yeah, this is the
Zoom.
trouble of Zoom. Yeah. But Elaine, so when you're cooking, is a lot of the recipes that you're kind of using, or do you even use recipes really, or is it more like kind of sourcing it from your friends, family, or how do you go about kind of figuring out, you know, what to make or how to make it?
Yeah, it's a combination of everything. So if I have it, I think most things that I make, I have an idea of in my head before I go in. And then if it's like inspired by something, I'll like Google recipes or look through cookbooks for a kind of like a basic version of that thing. And then I very rarely stick to recipes. I'm very bad at that. I think I get that from my mom, who she like cannot bake to save her life. I love her, but she can't because she won't follow a recipe. Um, so yeah, I riff a lot on like existing recipes from like other bloggers or cookbooks or chefs or like New York Times, anything like that. And then there's also just the influence of my mom and grandma. Like they'll tell me like eyeball this much, eyeball that much, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like
Yeah.
whenever I try to cook with my mom, I'm like, all right, can you tell me like exactly how much I need to put so I know, like I don't mess it up in the future. And you're like, just look at it, feel it. Like, do you feel how heavy that is? Like, that's
Yeah,
it. Or like when you're
exactly.
like when you're pouring the sauce, you're like, there we go. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what?
yeah. And I'll like pour a little bit, and she'll be like, no, 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 just like one more second, just like a little bit more. And
Yeah, I'm like,
I'll be
how
like,
do you
how do you
even
know?
know? Right.
Yeah, my grandma was showing me how to mix dumpling dough like a year or two ago, and she was like, the texture should be like hard but not too hard, like soft but not too soft. And I was like, so what does that mean? Like you're giving me both right now. Like that doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, like I remember it's like stirring something. They're like, "Do you feel like the weight of the stir?" I'm like, "No, I don't know what you mean."
But I kind of get it because at this point I've made so much sourdough. Like I make at least 2 or 3 loaves a week, and I started in the spring, and so it's just like been a lot. And by no means am I an expert. Like I still consider myself a beginner, but the amount that I've learned just from touch, just from like feeling the same dough like every few days for months, I can like, it's hard to explain. Like I kind of get where my grandma's coming from at this point, where it's like I really could not tell you what it should feel like. I don't know. But it just like there's a feeling there. So
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
been a
I
cool
guess
one.
you make a good point because, like, as designers for Jubilee and I, like, we spend a lot of time doing digital art and like
Hmm.
digital
Hmm.
whatever, and so very rarely do we, get to have a physical poster or like a book or whatever.
Hmm.
But like, yeah, like feeling the material is so different, and like seeing it in its physicality, yeah,
Right.
it's
Absolutely.
unmatched.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, we just, for the publication class, we've been having to do prototypes. So we're on our second one. And I mean, it's been an experience having to create our own books with by our hands. But
Mhm.
yeah, just like feeling the actual paper
Mhm.
and really compiling it with our own hands. Like I'm doing a spiral notebook, and I was telling Clarence this, but I had to hand punch each of the holes because none of the printers locally do wire binding unless it's like
Okay.
of 700 or plus. I was like, dang, okay, I'm not. So yeah, I think there's a lot that goes into like the feeling and knowing it's right just by that. So
Yeah, definitely. I took a printmaking class at school, and we did like a unit on bookmaking and bookbinding. And I decided to do an accordion style book. And oh my God, like
Oh
you have
wow.
to measure it so precisely and like make each crease so precisely. Otherwise, the whole thing will just like fall, like it just like doesn't even stand up right because it's so precise.
I can't
So
even
yeah.
imagine that. Like I'm literally just doing a single page glue bind, perfect
But
bind,
still, yeah.
and I'm just like, but the glue, like it's not holding.
No.
It's a
Yeah.
nightmare. Oh my
And
god.
there's so much patience. Like you just have to wait. You just have to let
I
it set. And
know.
there's
I
nothing you can
know.
do. Yeah.
I know. I think like just it is like a detriment to spending so much time online because like when I'm doing the fine measurements and doing all
Hmm.
those like things, it's like I can't even fathom how to like organize everything, right? But
Yeah.
yeah, and we're
um
all in our own homes. Like Clarence's
yeah,
setup is, I think it's in your room or a different room. Like you have the clamp and everything. Just
yeah.
yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
nightmare. But I had a question about, so you're creating and like posting all these great, platters of food and all these great shots. And I was wondering, like, do you really, I think a lot of people might wonder this, but do you really eat everything? Because I mean, like I feel like, you don't post like every day, but when you do post, it does look like a lot.
It is
Like
a lot. Yeah.
a grand, meal. So
No, I think that is a very fair question. I don't eat all of it. I'm lucky that my boyfriend is here right now and he eats like a monster. Like he eats 5 servings. So no offense to him, but yeah, he eats a ton of it. And then I only live like a mile away from my aunt and 2 cousins. And so anything that we don't eat, like dessert wise, baked good wise, we send to them. And so no food goes to waste unless something is like rotting, which that really doesn't happen. I don't throw anything away. Like everything does get eaten. But you're right, it is a lot of food. That's a fair
that's
question.
great. I feel like it's good to have, like, one of the problems of baking a lot, or like like if you're experimenting too, is that like it
Hmm.
might go to waste because you're not
Hmm.
gonna eat it all. But
Yeah.
that's good that you have people around you to do
Yeah,
that.
definitely. I'm This year I want to send out cookie boxes for the holidays because it's just hard to, you can't go gift shopping really. I hate online shopping. It's a headache. And so I wanted to do like these gift boxes, but that meant I had to recipe test so many cookies. Like right now I have shortbread that's cooling and there's just so much of it and I don't even know if that's the final product. So I'm glad that there are people that are like, oh yeah, butter and sugar, I'll eat that. Like
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
I
there's just
will order
always
a cookie box. Like I've been that kind of just because Instagram is a huge platform for all creators to kind of put out their work, whether it's
Mhm,
their prints or cookie box sample boxes or
mhm.
other mediums. So I will definitely order one. Like
That
Yeah,
sounds
do
terrific.
yeah. I think that was actually gonna go into my next question about if you're planning on like selling any of your food or like how is or I know that you just mentioned like it's holidays coming up, you were thinking about doing that. But how is Instagram and that platform serving you in that way? I know that like monetizing work can be both scary, but also really there's a lot of growth in that too. But I
Mhm.
would love to hear more about your plans for the holidays and the cookie boxes.
Yeah, I haven't really given a ton of thought about like monetizing my work or selling it. I think because I went public so recently, it's still taking me a long time to really accept that like anyone would want to buy any, like I don't know. For me, it's still just like my home cooking that I'm sharing. The idea that it's like commercial in any way is kind of foreign. Like I haven't really considered that. Um, but maybe one day down the road, my aunt is always like, you should open a bakery, and that that would be really cool. But that is like a whole different set of skills that I don't really have. Like I definitely would want to work in a bakery before I ever did that. Um, but yeah, like selling cookie boxes, I think is something I could do. I could handle that. But anything more than that, I haven't really considered.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
But
mean, it's
yeah.
scary, like thinking about, like, it kind of in a way sucks the joy of the original intent out of it. And like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you could love your work and like enjoy doing it, but once the money kind of factors thrown in, it's always a little bit difficult to
Mhm.
Right.
navigate.
Yeah, balancing like what is popular with other people versus what you like to do, I think is really hard. And after my freshman year of college in the summer, I worked at a cheesecake bakery in Pike Place, actually. And I just remember like the speed that they required out of you. Like I was in charge of making crusts for a really long time and like I had to stamp those things down. Like I was literally standing over this thing going
Oh
like
my god.
like it was like they need you to be a machine in order to get everything out right. And I just don't think that that's what I want to be doing right now. Like I think
Yeah, that
I like
sounds so intense.
it was intense. Yeah. And in the summer too, there was no AC in there. It was hot.
Oh my
It was
god.
hot.
Man, I feel like you're always stuck in these places
I
and you're
am.
just
I'm always
sweating.
sweating.
That's my fear. I feel like if I ever worked in a restaurant, like I would say I sweat pretty easily, and I'm just afraid of like me hovering over like the food and just like dripping sweat. Oh
Oh
man.
my God. Yeah.
Dang.
Hopefully that's not a concern I need to worry about very
Yeah,
much.
yeah, yeah. I think it'd be fine.
No, I think it's interesting how Instagram has really shifted during quarantine and how it's become more of a monetized space. Like they got rid of the notification button on the nav bar, so it's a shopping mall. Or I haven't even really checked it out because I don't shop on Instagram.
Yeah, I've never clicked it. I don't even know.
Yeah. But it's kind of overwhelming to see all of those prices and like monetizing work, because I think Clarence and I both resonate with that, where once design became something that our career was dependent on, it became a little bit less enjoyable because there's just a lot more stakes attached to it, and it's less free and less honestly art based. I feel like what we're learning right now can oftentimes be really design oriented and corporate, a bit corporate. So I think adding money into the mix is always kind of scary and can sometimes take joy away from it.
I
Yeah.
totally feel that. Yeah, when I was doing my internship in the fall and kind of just like trying to get into the New York art world, I think I got a little bit jaded where it just felt like everything was controlled by money. Like I went into art because I was so passionate about it and like wanted to do what I thought art was, and it turned out that that isn't really how the world views art, and that was kind of hard to deal with. I think there are definitely still areas where you can find people who think similarly to you and aren't like completely driven by profit, but it's hard because those places don't survive as much. And so, yeah, it's hard to balance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And especially in New York, I don't know, how are the people in the New York art community? Are they really friendly and open, or has it been kind of hard to integrate yourself in those spaces?
I think like anywhere you're going to find a mix. I was lucky enough that the fellow interns that I met were all really great people. Like everyone was just like really eager to get into the art world. No one was like already in and like exclude, like there wasn't any of that. And I met some artists that were just really fantastic people. But it was more so watching the bureaucracy of it all. Like individually, everyone you meet can be great, but then just watching how they all fit into this like giant puzzle, and it like
Right.
everyone just has their role and they're going to stick to it, and there's not really much anyone can do about that. That was, I think, the part that really frustrated me.
You're just stamping away, right?
Right, yeah, cogs in the machine, like
That's for real though. I think design, money controls everything in the design industry too. Like we were just talking about how design and capitalism so many industries go hand in hand with capitalism. Like they need it to survive, and
yeah,
it keeps the industry going. So it can be really overwhelming. And yeah, from like a big picture, it can be really overwhelming to navigate. But then the individual people you meet are definitely gems. But yeah, we're just all trying to figure out our place in the big
exactly. Trying to
But
make it work.
Elaine, so moving, I guess like thinking ahead now, let's say that if it weren't for or if the pandemic was to end at any point, what do you see yourself doing both with the food page, but also, like, you said you wanted to move back to New York. Like, I guess what do you have planned? Like, what do you want to do?
That's a big question.
What is your life ambition?
Yeah, what is the meaning of life? No, I mean, I definitely still care about the arts. I still like am applying to jobs there. Same kind of things I was looking at before, I'm still interested in. But now I think what this whole experience has opened my eyes to is the possibility of working in food, in the food industry. Like just from scrolling on Instagram and like stalking all these people that work in food, I've seen that there are jobs in like food styling and recipe development and things like that that aren't so far off from like the aspects of art that I really cared about, but just are in a different field. Um, so I think if anything, it's just broadened my job search. I don't really have like a single career I'm dead set on right now. Like I'm open to literally working in a restaurant or a bakery or working in an office for like a company I care about. But yeah, it just like has broadened what I'm looking at in general.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think like Jubilee and I are both kind of doing that job search as well. As we're kind of approaching the end of our senior year. So, I mean, I feel like a big part of searching for a job is searching for like titles that you didn't even know like existed in a way. So, yeah,
Yeah.
like food styling or create like being a part of the team that creates the recipe. Like I would have not really thought of that as a job necessarily. So that's
Right.
amazing. I feel like that's cool. Like I like that you're doing that, and it's hard to stay hopeful. It's hard to,
It's true.
but best of luck with that. And I feel
Thanks.
like you got it.
Oh,
Just looking at
thank
your
you.
page, you have
Manifesting for you. Oh,
You
yeah.
do too. Thanks.
But yeah, we are around our time. So thank you
Okay.
so much. But we
Yeah.
do always end up wrapping up about or with the song of the week. So yeah, this is just something that's been on repeat, something that's been carrying you during these uncertain times. But I think Clarence or I could start, and then you could wrap.
Sure. Yeah.
Clarence, do you have one, or I can start too?
I can go.
Okay.
So a friend of mine recently created a playlist, and then she shared it with me, and it
Hmm.
was fantastic. I think it was more like a funky sort of feel to it, but the song that I really loved from it is "The Two of Us" by Omar Apollo, and
Okay.
it's off of his newest album. But yeah, it's a vibe. I just feel like it's often hard to figure out how I even feel, and I think music does a good job of like maybe not even lyrically, but sonically, like kind of it expresses my mood in the right way, in ways that words can't describe. So
That's
yeah,
facts. I
Hmm.
feel
it's
that.
facts.
Yeah.
Um, I would say my song of the week is All Your Love by Jacob Ogawa. This has been, I heard this song for the first time around 2 or 3 years ago, and it's actually on our friend's show called Woke Brunch. They started a radio show, and she had an episode about love, and this was the first song that played. And I think it's really fitting. It's something that's really calming, and like Clarence said, it speaks a lot of how I'm feeling without me having to say how I'm feeling. And my friends and I, we made this playlist called Just Yearning, and it's a collaborative playlist. So it's been really fun seeing all of everyone's different contributions, but then it's really cohesive because I think we're all feeling the same things right now. So that's what I've been listening to. I've been
Oh.
really enjoying it. Yeah. How about you, Elaine?
All right. Maybe this is cheating, but I don't have a specific song. I just have the Charlie Brown Christmas album on all the time.
That's the vibe. I love
It
that.
is a vibe. It is a vibe. But this is just kind of like classic me where last year for my Wrapped, Spotify Wrapped, it was just all like movie soundtracks. Like that was it. That's all I had on. And so it's because when I need to focus, like there can be no lyrics involved. Like I just have to focus. So
Yeah, I feel that. I think like in our kind of field of study, luckily we don't have to do as much like you're reading a lot and like trying to memorize information. Like
Mhm.
if it were that, I would be in the same lane of like I need to listen to something without lyrics.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's amazing. I love that.
I think I recently found this mix on on SoundCloud that's like a lo-fi Christmas mix. And the
Ooh.
first like 10 seconds of it is Charlie Brown saying, "Why do I feel so sad even though it's Christmas time? Is there something wrong with me?" And I feel like everyone's
So
like,
sad.
I think everyone's feeling like that. I listen to it and like, I'm about to cry. But I think Charlie Brown's really relatable this season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very true.
I've been watching this like YouTube it's like a lo-fi mix on YouTube, and it's just like they just like recycle clips of Charlie Brown kind of, I don't know, just doing whatever, but it's so calming. It's the
It's so
perfect music.
calming.
Charlie
Yeah, it's what
Brown,
we need.
for real.
Wait, you listen to that just like while you're baking?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
okay.
I listen to that, like, and then oldies, a lot of oldies.
Perfect.
Love
Yep.
that. No, yeah.
But thank you so much for joining us and
Yeah.
talking about, what you're doing, what you're up to. It's always nice to also have like you meet new faces. So
Yeah,
Jubilee and
definitely.
Elaine's first time. So that was amazing. We're just happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me my daily dose of social interaction. This is great.
You're done. You're done for the
I'm done. Actually,
yeah.
yeah, my yearly dose, really. So,
No,
yeah.
yeah, but we're wishing you the best as
Thanks.
the months come, and we're wishing the best for everyone that's listening as we wrap up. I can't believe 2020 is almost over,
I
but
know.
yeah, wishing the best for everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. And yeah, we'll see you all next week. Peace.